Hello and welcome to the Afri Dominion Show. My name is Freeman Singirankabo, and thank you so very much for tuning into our program today. Those of you tuning in and broadcasting into, those of you tuning in and to our program today, my apologies. Welcome, especially if you're tuning in live from our social media pages like Facebook and YouTube. Welcome, 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 and we would love to give you a huge welcome and thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And we'd like to express our gratitude that you are with us today, as you have been for this past couple of weeks, ever since we started our brand new show. And we'd like to inform each and every one of you watching us, especially if you're watching us live from the television, if you're listening to us from radio station, and of course, you all who are on social media, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so thrilled that you can join us right now in this conversation, in this program here at Afri Dominion Show. We speak frankly with each and every one of you. We speak boldly with each and every one of you, and we speak without any apologies. Why? Because the issues that you get to hear from here, the issues that we get to discuss, these are some of the issues most deeply within our hearts. So as we talk about them, as we discuss them, we literally ask no apologies to nobody, because we truly, truly care about them. We welcome all of your feedbacks, no matter what they look like. Bring your feedbacks, because we love to have your feedbacks so that we may have an opportunity to actually improve ourselves. Make sure that if there is something you like, we keep on doing it. If there is something you do not like, we actually figure out a way to rectify that. It is in this spirit that everything we discuss here, we discuss it in the spirit of truth, love, and trust. And these are the benchmarks by which we would love each and every one of you to actually measure both the integrity and the validity of the content that we share with you every single day here at Afri Dominion Show. And with that in mind, I would love very much to let you know how do you get in touch with us, especially if you are dropping us a message, if you giving us some feedback. If you want to get in touch with us, how do you get in touch with us? All of you who want to get in touch with us, we have a website, which is the primary way to get in touch with us. Through the website, you can find a phone number, an email, and a group that you can actually join so we can get in touch together. Especially if you want to meet and join other like minds, you can find them there. So what is our website? Our website is www.afridominion.com. www.afridominion.com. Our main email is info@afridominion.com. info@afridominion.com. And with that in mind, welcome to each and every one of you. Can you please fix my earpiece? Welcome to all of you guys. We are super excited that we can actually meet again today by God's grace and get to talk about the things we care very deeply about. Greetings to all of you guys on social media in particular, because you guys are constantly together in this very day. On Thursdays, we are together just like the rest of the days, either be in this program in English or in Kenya, Rwanda. You guys are amazing. You are amazing. You are amazing. We are super grateful that we continue to share this journey together. So those of you who do not know this program, what is this program and what is it about? What is Afri Dominion to begin with? Because most of you aren't familiar with what this thing is, and we'd like to start from there. From there, then we jump right into our conversation for today. So what is Afri Dominion? Afri Dominion, it's an idea that inspires, advocates, and encourages a complete and total dominion of Africa by its sons, daughters, and African descendants. One country at a time, all in the interest of African people primarily. And then the rest of the world can come afterwards. You may feel, you may wonder, why does it sound like you guys are just creating a little cocoon? Africa is in disorder. Africa as a house, it needs to be thoroughly cleaned from the very bottom, scratched, cleaned. So we want to get our house in order first and foremost, which is why you're not going to hear us talking about European the Americans, the Australians, the Asians, etc. That doesn't mean that we are ignoring them. We simply say we want to clean our home first, Africans. So the show itself, the Afro-Dominion show, it's a mouthpiece of the idea. We get to discuss here as a show. We get to encourage here as a show. We get to inspire. We get to advocate. We get to encourage everything related to a complete and total dominion of Africa. If you're into that, welcome to the show. If you're doing something against that, welcome to the show too, because we are going to talk about you. Because we want our people to know what to avoid and what to also go for. So essentially, the Afro-Dominion show also, it inspires in its program. It advocates in its program. It also encourages that each and every one of you, sons, daughters, and African descendants, take a full control, take a full dominion of Africa, take a full management, take the governorship, take the leadership, take the control, take the mastery of Africa and African resources, its management. One country at a time, all for the interest of the rest of you brothers and sisters within Africa primarily. And once we're done with that, the rest of the world can come up and can come afterwards. That's truthfully what we're doing here. If you hear us focusing on Africa constantly, that's because we want to get our house in order. Are we together? So given that this the idea it's so broad, we have many themes that we focus on every single day from Monday to Friday. So Mondays through Fridays we broadcast 12 to 1:30 Eastern Standard Time or Washington DC time. If you want to catch us live, you can come, you can come during those time frames. Those of you who do not know the Washington DC time, go on Google, go in one of these platforms as far as a social media, even search engine. You can see the time difference. But we are live during 12 to 1:30, Mondays through Fridays. We never miss it. We're not here Saturday and Sunday because we get a little rest and get to do some other things on it. So what do we talk about on Monday? On Monday we have one theme. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Every single day has its own theme. So Monday we get to talk about the eradication of African refugees and African stateless persons. Why? Because currently, Africa as big as it is, can you believe we have our own internal refugees? How is it that Africa as a continent and all these little countries within, you find yourself a refugee? Why can't you not go to your own homeland? Why do you find yourself as a stateless person or a person without a country within your own homeland? Something is wrong with that picture. But it's not by accident. So we want to talk about the cause and find the remedy. How do we remediate that? How do we rectify what's happening right now with Africa? If we do not take a close attention, if we do not take a careful examination of what's happening, we will not be in a position to do anything about it. Especially if we say that we are going to take back, we are taking back the full, total dominion of Africa. So on Mondays, we get to talk about that theme. On Tuesdays, we talk about the Constitution, law and policies, review and implementation in Africa, in these African countries. We know that every single country around the world is run by a constitution. Those of you young people, a constitution is a set of instructions. Sometimes they call laws. But that governs the entire homeland. If it's a country, it governs your whole entire country. Now, that is an agreement between you, the people, and a set of group of people who happen to be citizens that represent you. They usually represent you. They represent your immediate interest, your primary interest, not the foreign, not the foreigner interests. So those individuals are what they become what we call a government. A government is nothing more than a bunch of these groups of citizens that you have personally as a people elected or chose to be in those spots, in those positions to represent you, to secure your interest, to look after your best interest, and also to fight for your interest. Anything that is contrary to that, it is not a representation of the people and by the people. So we know that the Constitution, which is usually called the supreme agreement between the people and the country, the people and the people themselves, the people and those chief citizens and those representative citizens, to ensure that everybody's on the same page. Laws, it's also a set of instructions. But now these laws do not necessarily look the entire country. They can just now focus on a specific region. They can focus on a much smaller region, much smaller audience. And oftentimes they do not require all of you as a country to select them. You simply have to have a representative, again, whom you sent there to study what's going on in your neighborhood, in your region. They come up with a set of instructions, which we call law, that everybody agrees on. They agree on it. Of course, they have to let you know that, hey, this is what we have found as part of what we are going to seek out, to look out, to secure, to protect, as far as your interests. And we are going to set up these agreements. And when you say, yes, kumbaya, they go ahead and take care of it. And that becomes a law. Now, the laws here in Washington, D.C., they may differ the laws in Maryland. They may differ with the law in Virginia. Why? Because they are specifically for Washington, D.C. as an example. They are specifically for the state of Maryland as another example. They are specifically for the state of Virginia as another example. I'm using the United States as an example in this predicament because that's where I am right now. And that's something that I can actually easily tell you the difference between a constitution. The Constitution, it's another law, but that covers the entire United States, or it covers your respective country. Whatever country that you are in, a constitution, it's the prime, it's the global agreement. The laws, they can focus on one or more regions. It could be a state, if you are many states, it could be a region or many regions and so on. A policy, it's another set of instructions. But now that's much more skewed, much more smaller. And it usually touches a very small group of people or things. For example, here at the studio we have a set of instructions that we follow every day, so that the programs that we get, that we get to broadcast, that we get to air, can come to you. However, the same set of instructions that we have aren't the same set of instructions that the whole entire building follows. Only in the rooms that we are occupying as a studio, we follow our own instructions. However, the building has an entire set of instructions that even as we follow. But the next room, the upstairs or the downstairs, they don't have to follow the same set of instructions, especially if we are not the same organization. Are we together? So our set of instruction, also known as policies, may differ than the policies upstairs or to another organization somewhere. And because we have different policies, I only have to follow them. Someone else doesn't have to follow them. They can respect them, but they don't have to follow them. They have their own set of instructions, all agreement or policies. Are we together? So we get to talk about that on Tuesday. On Wednesdays, it's our testimony time. We get the opportunity to write our own history, our own way, with no apologies to nobody. Whatever that's happening in your lives, you get to write it down. You get to talk about it. You get to come on a television, in front of a camera, and you get to talk about that without anyone saying, hey, listen, let me tell you how you are going to say it. Let me tell you how you are going to write it. Because for the longest time, Africa as a continent has had its history buried down. Most of us, we have no clue who we are as a people, tragically speaking. A perfect example, look at the black people in the United States. You would not ask them, where do you come from in Africa? They have no clue, because that part of their history was stripped off from them. They cannot pinpoint where they come from. But thanks to technology, now with the usage of DNA, you actually may be able to pinpoint where you might be coming from. Especially that we have a lot of the government agencies all over the world that specializes in coming to your local region and take a sample of your DNA, take a sample of your blood, and then they take it back to the respective labs and they get to study you as a people. This is happening today. So if they wanted to, they can map out every single person and where you come from. We have that technology today in 2022. So if you so choose wanting to know who's your cousin, who's your lost cousin, you can actually find out. Now, there is money involved because, of course, some of these services aren't free. But guess what? If you have the knowledge, if you have the skill set to do it, you can then determine how you can mitigate the whole money issue, which is why you gotta look the gifts from within. If you have that, if we have those gifts, use them for the better of your own people. Are we together? On Thursdays, we get to talk about the spirit of dominion. What is dominion, guys? This word is one of the words that you are constantly going to hear from here. Even the show is called Afri-Dominion. That word dominion is important. What is dominion? Dominion is to govern. When you dominate, you govern, you control, you manage, you master. You even get to protect what you're dominating. You manage, you've got to be able to manage. So the spirit of dominion entails that you actually, from within you, natively from within you, you know what to do. Nobody will give you a task knowing that you don't have the capacity to execute it. Normally, that's how it works. You were brought here to dominate the entire planet. But now you as Africans, you have the mandate to dominate the entire continent of Africa. The entire continent. From the birds that flies in the air, to the fish in the water, to every animal that's on the land, to the natural resources within the continent. All of that, you have the capacity to manage it, to make it better, and also to protect it, to secure it, and not to misuse it. That is your mandate as kings and queens of Africa. You, sons, daughters, and African descendants. Now, if anybody tells you, you know what, you're not a leader, you can't do nothing, you are good to nothing, that's because that's what they choose to give you. That's what they are choosing to label you. But that's not your true image. That's not your true identity. So on Thursdays, we actually get to set the record straight to make sure that that doesn't happen. On Fridays, we talk about the current event and its impact to Africa and African people. Why does this matter? The mainstream media have so much to say about Africa and African people. So much of it. Now, if you listen to everything that they say and you have zero to say about it, especially if it's something that is inaccurate about you as a people, whose fault is it that the rest of the planet become misinformed about you? It would have to be you and me. So what we're doing here, we're making sure that if there is any information we know that it's false, we actually come forward and correct it with facts. We don't just talk, we bring facts. And it's in this spirit that from Mondays through Fridays, all the themes that we have, we speak them directly to all of you. We even say, you know what, you are welcome to challenge everything that we have to say. We have Zoom open. We have various ways you can reach us in real time, live, so that any little teeny mistake that we may actually commit, it's quickly rectified before the show is over. You don't have to know us. We don't have to be friends. You just have to say, you know what, that doesn't sound right. Let me check in and let them know that that is completely false. Now, the same way you take your time to say that is inaccurate, bring some facts. Don't just come in and say that that's not true. Even everything we say here, we know that we are on the record. Given that we are on the record, we are open to correction anytime we get it wrong, but we are also boldly standing and saying enough is enough. We want to get our house in order. We want to do it ourselves, and we are taking the lead. Anybody who doesn't like it, that's on you. All right? So with that in mind, we want to go ahead and jump right in it. Today is Thursday, the Spirit of Dominion. And the theme or the topic for today, it's going to be, are we purposely ignoring modern slavery in Africa? Who can denounce whips in Rwanda led by Kagame? Those of you who don't know, Kagame is the president of Rwanda, the current president of Rwanda. So I repeat again, are we purposely ignoring modern slavery in Africa? Who amongst you can denounce whips in Rwanda led by President Paul Kagame? That's the main topic. Now, I want to break it down. How do we fight modern slavery in today's Africa? How can a Pan-Africanist be a slave master at the same time in Africa? And then 28 years of amnesia by the international community, quote unquote. The whole entire 28 years of amnesia of international community, which happens also to be the exact numbers of years of ruler by a whip in Rwanda, aka Singapore of Africa. How do you progress? And you have a whips system in the whole entire country. We're gonna jump right in it. And of course, I always end up asking you, what is your role in all of that? Are we together? So that's what we got. Bring it on, bring your A game, because I have brought my own A game as well. And let's get to work. Let's get busy. So today, as I have started saying it, are we purposely ignoring modern slavery in Africa? Why did I bring this topic? What is modern slavery? I think that's the best place to start, because some of you, we may use a word, but the way I am presenting it here, I want to ensure that it does not get to be misunderstood. So, I want to start. What is slavery to begin with? Okay? Given that, again, I'm not that smart, but I can read a dictionary. I went to Britannica dictionary online. I was actually Googling. And then I typed in the word slavery. You can do that. Even modern slavery, you can do that. You can see what people say about that. So, according to the dictionary of the Britannica dictionary online, it says slavery is a condition in which one human being is owned by another. A slave was considered by law a property, a charter, and was deprived most of the rights ordinarily laid by free persons. So if you are a slave person, you don't have rights. And if you are a citizen, you have rights. I want you to remember why we keep on saying you must know why you are citizens. A citizen is a person with rights. A slave is a person without rights who happens to be a property. That person could be a property of a citizen, by the way. How do we know that? Look at the whole history that most of you don't get to read, especially during slavery trade. Africans were properties, they were like product. They were products that were being sold to Europe, and they were being sold to the Americas. They were being sold to India. They were being sold to Asia, and I believe also in Australia. Now, because we were never considered as human beings, as full human beings, if I may add it, it was okay to treat us in any shape, any way, any shape, any form. It was just fine. The same way you can grab a cow and misuse it, even though today we have some animal advocates or advocacy for animal services. You might actually get in trouble. Let alone a dog. Mistreated a dog here in the United States, you may even end up to jail or in jail. So African, back in those days, we were just products for the rest of the world. Now, was it fair that you were a product when you fully know that you are a human being, not any human being, a king and a queen being sold to be a slave, from having rights to no rights whatsoever? That's what we're talking about. But in addition to that, as a slave, not only you didn't have any rights, but you could easily be violated. You could easily be killed. And no harm, no foul. Because again, you weren't a human being, a full human being. So why would they care? If you want to eat a chicken, you could be a chicken farmer. And if you want any of the chickens you have there, you can say, okay, I want that one. Someone can go grab it and then can just kill it, and you don't feel bad about it. Because when you see the chicken there, you see lunch, you see dinner. You just see, you see food. Africans, in the eyes of the European and the Americans, the rest of these continents, they were regarded as just, human-looking like products. The same way you can consider a robot, you wouldn't call a robot a human being. And you can misuse a robot at any given time, because after all, it doesn't do the same thing humans do in terms of what you would think, like a robot doesn't have a life. So you don't treat it like a human being. Even though you had a life, you were never treated like that. So why am I taking some time over this here? Why? I want to connect it. So modern slavery, maybe I should have actually also said, how do you get to know the symptoms of slavery before we jump to modern slavery? Remember, key word, you have no rights. You are a property. You cannot just decide to do what you want to do at any given time, like a free person can do it. So modern slavery, it's also slavery, except that back in the days, when slavery was there, you could physically see people in shackles. Physical shackles, you could see them. Not only that, they would make sure that mentally you knew you were a slave. And not only that, your spirit was also quenched down, that you would never get to behave like a free person or a full citizen. Emotionally, they reminded you that you are a property. You are just a tool that gets work done. Again, this is not discrimination. This is real talk to all of you. So modern slavery, in my own words, again, I'm not very smart, but I can connect. It is the same kind of slavery. However, they removed the physical shackle. The shackles we no longer have. But all other things that used to come with slavery have actually been maintained. You get to lose your rights. That's key. Now being able to have your rights. Today, you will see many nations, specifically African nations, who have beautiful laws in the books. But these laws are barely followed, if not followed at all. Again, we take Rwanda as an example, because I follow Rwanda. Literally, I follow Rwanda. Now, can you imagine that a country as small as Rwanda, that most of you know because of the genocide in 1994, would you believe that in 2022, Rwanda is practicing modern slavery? Rwanda is practicing modern slavery. We can scrutinize, we can examine, you can also be the judge. Now, I submit to you, and before I actually say that, let me also put a disclaimer. I also work on another studio called Umutwari, which actually broadcasts in Kinyarwanda. We have been collecting testimonies from other Rwandan citizens of their ordeal since 1990, even before that, but we've been focusing from 1990 to today, what's happening, what's been their lives like. So on Wednesdays, those of you who want to follow, you can listen to testimonies. The same way here on Wednesdays, we get to talk about that. We get to share. We collect public testimonies, but also private testimonies, meaning there are those individuals who actually are ready to actually freely share with you, the entire world, openly, what's been happening in their lives. But there are those also who aren't ready, but who have such a heavy burden of what's been happening in their lives. So we get to actually record them on video cameras, and they get to actually pour their heart in front of us, and we get to preserve their testimony. Why? Again, we are writing our own history anew. Since now we know that we are responsible to our own history, we also have to take action to document our own history. Why? If it isn't done by us, it is certainly not going to be done by any government. Government cherry pick history, especially they write down the history that usually pretty much document them right, which means they neglect the rest of the history that doesn't portray them in a positive way. Perfect example is Rwanda. Right now, a kid born in Rwanda from July 20th, 1994 going forward, they think that Rwanda just started existing in 1994 when the Rwandan Patriotic Front seized the power. That's what most of the people, most of these young people born from that very specific day going forward believes. Now, what's so special about that date, July 20th, 1994? That's when the Rwandan Patriotic Front, or the RPF, seized the power. That's when they toppled the government that was in power then, and they started managing the country. Since they took over the leadership, the management, the control of the entire Rwanda, young people who have been born since then, they know very little to nothing about what Rwanda was like before, except a cherry-picked history that's pre-selected for them and that's given for them to consume and to memorize. Anything contrary to that, it's labeled as genocide ideology. It becomes a crime. It is very, 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 very prohibited. Listen to me carefully, young people, especially all over Africa. Those of you who praise the president of Rwanda, the current president of Rwanda, has been in power in that country since that very day on July 20th, 1994. Now you may say that is not true, Freeman. It is true, and I will prove it to you. When the Rwandan Patriotic Front when the rebels seized the power in Rwanda, Paul Kagame, who is the current president today, became the vice president and the defense minister of Rwanda. Listen to me carefully. In 1994, when the Rwandan Patriotic Front seized the power in Rwanda, Paul Kagame, who was the leader of the rebel, became both the vice president of the nation and he also became the defense minister. Are we together? So as a vice president of Rwanda in 1994, he started learning the management of the entire country. He oversaw every single operation militarily that was taking place in the country, including taking people to jail, murdering people in the name of revenge, disappearing the people, becoming judge and jury at the same time, all under his leadership and Pastor Bizimungu, who was the then president of Rwanda. Even though everybody knows, especially the international community, that President Pastor Bizimungu never was a president. He was a placeholder, meaning President Kagame had zero leadership experience. He knew not how to manage a country. He had zero experience in the management of a country, of a nation. The closest thing to management that he knew, it was leading few army, few rebels, couple thousand from Uganda to Kigali. That's the sort of experience that he had. But he also had other management in the services, in the military services of Uganda. He was one of the military officers in Uganda, trained by Museveni, also trained by the American. Remember? So now, in 1994, from July 20th, 1994, up until in 2000, he enjoys being the vice president, overseeing every military operation. He had more power than the president because he said, I seized the country myself. So you, Mr. Whatever, you say whatever say, you jump whenever jump. If I say you jump, you jump. If I say sign here, he signs there. That's how he ruled. So that's why I say that ever since July 20th, 1994, up until today, he's been in power. But he had to get some sort of experience. In 2000, he feels that he's ready to become a president. He tells President Pastor Bizimungu to sit down. However, he just couldn't say that, given that we portray ourselves that we have a constitution. Set up a team of your own guys to make sure that they tell him, hey, we want you to resign. Like it or not, just say that you resign. Pastor Bizimungu resigns. Naturally, Paul Kagame, Mr. Vice President, becomes the president. Immediately after he becomes the president, guess what? He removes the vice president position of the presidency. Why? Because he no longer needs someone to check him the same way he was checking, or he was actually overruling Pastor Bizimungu, the then president. And then they also start working on a new constitution, a new people's agreement with the new set of group ruling them. Now, with all of that, why am I going slow with it and deeply in it? Rwanda started something that only has been seen during slavery time. Remember, because of the genocide, Paul Kagame ordered various people to be imprisoned, to be killed, to be whipped, to be absolutely dehumanized. Now, all this that I'm saying right now, we have recordings about it. We have testimonies, in other words, in Kenya, Rwanda. And we intend actually to translate all these testimonies in the languages that you, African, can actually listen to. That you, the entire world community, can listen to. Why is it important? The modern slavery was established in Rwanda from July 20th, 1994 up until today, with the blessings of the international community. We will prove that also. So, everyone who was not pro-Rwandan Patriotic Front was imprisoned. Definitely those who have killed people, generally, they definitely needed to go to jail. The same way you can easily think so. If you were smart, you were taken to jail or killed. If you were a male, you had to go to jail because somehow you had to explain how did you survive 1994. Remember, there is no judicial system. The judicial system is based on what Paul Kagame wants in the whole entire country. Just like a king, not a benevolent king, a king. Listen to me carefully. Any king can say, this is what I want, nobody can override it. Never mind that there are laws to follow. The king, whenever a king speaks, what he says becomes a law. When Paul Kagame speaks, whatever he says is followed. Young people, remember what I said in set of instructions. Remember a policy, a law, and a constitution. Paul Kagame, whatever he says in Rwanda, whatever he used to say in Rwanda, was a wrap. No discussions about it. Until recently, pre-COVID time, all of that stopped. So from 1994, from July 20, 1994, all the way to March, actually the whole March we didn't see him. Let's say, for the lack of a better specific date, to the very end of February 2020. This man had run Rwanda successfully according to his intent, his will, and his purpose. Never mind that Rwanda had a constitution. Never mind that Rwanda had a judicial system, supposedly independent judicial system. Never mind that Rwanda had a legislature body, which was and is still supposed to actually talk to the people and represent the interest of the people and by the people. He instituted a whip. You heard me correct. Paul Kagame and the government that he leads from July 20th, 1994, instituted a whip, like a slavery whip. Get my words correct. You may ask, how is it that we don't know? We do know that some of you journalists have taken pictures. How do we know it? We have some of those pictures. So, how did that happen? How is it still happening? Remember, they claim that at least 800,000 Rwandan of ethnic Tutsis were killed in just a matter of 100 days, okay? Out of those 800,000 people, Rwanda had about 6 million people in the country. So, which leaves at least 5.2 million people. Now, when the Rwandan Patriotic Front seized the power, every single Rwandese person in the country and those who have fled the country had to answer questions as to how did you survive the genocide? How did you survive? Which is why all the male were sent to prison. They were beaten, whipped, days in and days out, days in and days out, days in and days out. Not only that, they instituted that, you know what, not only you're going to be in jail, you are going to be responsible for your own food. Follow me carefully, young people. Normally, here in the United States, when you become a prisoner, the correctional facility, the prison itself, the prison services, they actually take the full responsibility of you as an individual. Why? Because you become what they call a property of the state. Your family member or your family members do not actually go home and cater for you. The government that is finding you guilty of whatever crime they might think you have committed, or if they believe that you have committed a crime, even before they actually accuse, if they can accuse you, but before the justice system confirms it, they might actually book you. They might keep you in prison. But the state, the government, the country is responsible for your well-being, meaning they are responsible for your food, for your clothing, for your basic well-being as a human being. Not so in the days of the Rwandan Patriotic Front. First and foremost, those who had killed other people, the majority of them were executed on spot. And that's when the international community started realizing, like, hey, now the Rwandan Patriotic Front is killing people. Let's figure out a way to abolish death sentence in Rwanda. Many Rwandese people were executed, both the perpetrator and the innocent ones. Especially from the male, most of the male were executed with no files. Up to this very day, 5.2 million people. If you go in the justice system in Rwanda, you are not going to find a file or files, an archive that can tell you what every single one of those people have done, because they do not have it. They've never cared to do it. Remember, they were never trained to manage a nation. They were never trained to manage a region. They were never trained to manage a small neighborhood. Or they knew how to shoot, they knew how to follow. So imagine the government is toppled, someone is going to rule it. First and foremost, they rule it the way they knew how. On the battle, they killed. So anybody who seemed to have had any blood, even if they fail or they smell that you could be potentially what they call adui, an enemy, you were killed. So many executions were taking place under the orders of Paul Kagame, the so-called Pan-Africanist. The rest of them, he told them to take him to jail. Most of them rotted in jail. With or without any crime, just you had to go there. Now, remember I was just telling you that in developed countries, even in underdeveloped countries, if they found that you are guilty of any crime, at the very least, they take you to court system, and the judge determines whether you are guilty or innocent. Not the president, not the prime minister, not the minister, certainly not a general, not any military members, and nobody who happens to be a manager of a country, a manager of a region, a manager of your neighborhood. Not so in Rwanda, led by Paul Kagame. So many families will find themselves in jail, including mothers with children, their husbands, their children also, older children. As long as they felt like you belong there, you went there. Up to this very day, there are innocent people in jails in Rwanda who have been there at least 28 years without a single file that can tell you what crime has this individual has committed. The saddest part of it, the international community knows about it. So those people who were imprisoned, they were whipped. Since 1994 up until today, it happens regularly. Now get the kicker. To add the salt to the injury, the government told their own families, since you guys are the killers, you are going to be responsible to cater for these killers that we have caged here. So they ordered their families to bring food for them. Now get this. You bring food for them, you also get a whooping. You get whipped. And when I say this, most of you, when you hear this, you may actually think that I'm exaggerating. Which is why, before I started saying this, I was saying that we have recorded plenty testimonies of those who have gone through this experience and still have members experiencing or going through this experience. Whipping in 2022. Whipping under the management of Paul Kagame. Whipping with the blessings of the international community. All that money from 1994 up until today. They simply have amnesia. Young people, those of you who don't know what amnesia is, it's forgetting. This is actually a selective amnesia. They simply forget, they simply just look away for the things that they don't want to have anything about, any saying. They mind their own business, basically, the way we are told, mind your own business. By the way, slaves were to mind their business anytime a master was doing something. So we have been taught as Africans, mind your business. We have been taught in various government positions, mind your own business. If you're not in this department, you have no right to ask me anything. So you Rwandan led by Paul Kagame, again, became also like that. Up until this very day, the system has taken roots. You have a loved one in a jail for 28 years. You take some food for them, you get a courtesy whip and whippings because you have came. So now imagine, how do you go to a jail taking food? You have no crime, you have not committed a crime. A guard at the jail whips you, or guards whip you every time you're bringing food, since 1994 up until now. Only slavery times, people were being whipped. In Rwanda in 2022, a whip, it's now a standard. You can get whipped like a slave. But not only that, if you're so-called a genocide denier, a génocidaire, or someone now who's against the government, not only you get whipped, but you get special treatment. There's a place that we call Gachinya. Gachinya. This is where they specialize in actually torture, all under the leadership of President Paul Kagame. Now, the good thing about it, not so good thing, I wanted to say, given that the international community is aware of it, start from the Red Cross, start from the Human Rights Watch, start from these various nations, including the United States, including the United Kingdom, including Canada, including France, including Germany, my mind went blank, including Russia, including China. All these major 5 countries that run the world, they are fully aware that Rwanda tortures, that Paul Kagame and his government are torturing Rwandese people. Remember, if you are a citizen, you have the right to liberty, to your life, and to your happiness. And so we are told. From 1994, a legal citizen of Rwanda who's been innocent in that prison has become what? A slave, a property. But a property whose burden is actually been given to his or her family, not the government. The government enjoys squeezing the labor out of them. Prisoners in Rwanda have built the Singapore of Africa that you know today. They have built all these beautiful mansions in Rwanda. The so-called génocidaires, they have been the one offering free labor on behalf of the so-called afande. Afande is like a Swahili word for like a general, like a military officer. As a military officer, you do not have to go and look for a paid labor. You can get some cheap labor. Actually, cheap is even an expensive word. Free, F-R-E-E, free labor from the prison, because the génocidaires in prison are good to nothing except killing people. So you might as well put them to work. And as soon as you get them to work, bring their families to feed them. While they are at it, whip them both. Classic slavery in Rwanda. Exploitation at its best. So you, the international community, you go to Rwanda, to Kigali. Oh, you are amazed by how clean the streets of Kigali are looking. You are absolutely amazed. And you start praising President Kagame. He's the most Pan-Africanist. If only we could have President Kagame to lead our nation. Why? Because the lobbyists, because the advertisers, they have explicitly taken some beautiful images, some beautiful videos, pre-packaged them, put behind a beautiful script, and then brought it to you, and they say, swallow that. That's gonna be your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, your dessert for 28 years. And all of you, you take it and you love it the same way we see movies. Welcome to the modern slavery system in Rwanda. Taught by the outsider to Rwanda. We have perfected that system. Today in Rwanda, a standard Rwandese person, you could be walking on the street right now, and you can see a soldier, a police officer, whipping someone on the street. And you do what? You mind your business. You keep on going this. You don't even say what has he or she done. You just mind your business. Because Paul Kagame and the government of Rwanda has made sure that every single Rwandese person gets to know in their head that they are state property, that they are slaves, that he and only he can either give you life or take it away, that he and only he can order you to lose all your property or to give you property. Does that sound familiar? In kingdoms, a king or a queen can actually take the property because that was a personal property of the kingdom, not an individual property. In Rwanda, before 1994, every property owner, today they no longer own properties in Rwanda. Land, it's no longer owned by the people. The land is the government. And who's the head of the government? Paul Kagame and the family. So today, Paul Kagame can say, take away that property. They take it away. And I want you to understand these words I'm using, guys. They, of course, don't just come in and take it away. They go back in the so-called laws of the land. They manufacture lies, set them up correctly. They take you to a sham trial, a sham court. They make sure that the judge simply reads out the verdict. He does not examine, he or she does not examine. They have pre-prepared verdict for them. That is Rwanda that you guys don't know today. That is the modern slavery I'm referring to today. That is the 28 years rule by a whip in a Rwanda led by Paul Kagame. The same Paul Kagame praised worldwide. The same Paul Kagame that most of you Africans say he's the most amazing Pan-Africanist. That's why I say we have slave owners in Rwanda in the forms of presidents, in the forms of generals, in the forms of ministers, prime ministers, in the form of anybody who can just have a saying over you. The same way if you were a master, a slave knew where the master was at any given time. Today you could just, the government can give you a gun and you can become a little teeny king, a little teeny queen in your own little land where you can do as you please and there are zero consequences. Now, if you think that I'm exaggerating, because some of you might be listening to like this kid is smoking something. Again, from July 20th, 1994. How many members of the arms or military or police in the Rwandan Patriotic Front have been prosecuted for crimes against Rwandan people, especially both innocent and the guilty one? How many of them have been prosecuted for taking the laws in their own hands and rendered judgment before the court? Can you guess how many? You, the international community, I am asking you. And you, sons, daughters, and African descendants, I am asking you. Can you guess? If you have no idea, I would humbly request to all of you, to each and every one of you, to go back from July 20th, 1994, when the Rwandan Patriotic Front seized the power. Audit everything that they have done thus far. Go over what they have done. Look how many Rwandese people are fleeing the nation today, are fleeing Rwanda today under the leadership of Paul Kagame, even though lately he's nowhere to be found. The system that he's built with the help of the international community is a perfect modern slavery system. Perfect modern slavery system. You can get killed in Rwanda and they will render justice in 24 hours. They will close the case and they would actually prohibit you to even appeal. And if you happen not to understand the language being communicated to you, they bring they bring a whip. They remind you, listen, we have nicely asked you to let this go. Since you need to properly encourage yourself. Since we have to encourage you in another way, they'll just take you and they beat you up until you now be like, okay, I get it. Now, guys, I ask you, is this the kind of country you ought to be living in 2022? All that money, all your dollars, all your taxes, all your euros have been enriching the kingdom in the form of a government, in the form of a republic. Millions of people dying consequently, of whom you will never get to know unless you get to actually watch our testimonies translated, which is another work. Unless you are lucky to have someone to come forward and say, you know what, this has happened to me. And they testify. And I thank God because technology has made it so that we can actually now give our testimony without having to go to the mainstream media. Because these mainstream media are owned by the very people whose hands has been training the Paul Kagames and all the goonies there to successfully set up this modern slavery system in Rwanda. So today you have a Rwanda full of slaves who cannot talk, who cannot voice out their pain, their poor quality life. You cannot ask a bystander Rwandese person, how are you? They will have to check left and right before they respond to you. If they are surrounded by good-looking people, oftentimes they are the same people telling them what to say and how to say it. The same way you tell a slave, do this, they do it. Say that, they say it. And then you take a recording, say, I spoke to someone here. This is what they told me. I had a recording. Of course you have a recording. If you go in a master's house and you talk to their slaves, can you ask a question, a slave, and that slave will tell you what you want to hear, or they will tell you what the master wants to hear? So again, I, as one of the sons of Rwanda, I was born there. I know better. And I know that the life my brothers and sisters are living in Rwanda, it's not the kind of life that you and your children would want to live. Again, I am openly and publicly saying, scrutinize, put it to test, see it for yourself. But there's something good about all of this. Don't you ever say that we have never taken the time to say something about it. Because in 95, there was this movie where some leader said, never, never again the genocide. Why? Because it was their time to play a script that was also predetermined for them. Remember, these countries, these developed countries, they trained the Rwandan Patriotic Front, assisted by Uganda, brought to Rwanda, toppled the government, brought a new system, a new modern system, and here we are today. You have more citizens leaving the country. And by the way, let me actually also say properly, they do not just leave the country. Because in Rwanda, it's illegal to flee the country. Can you believe it? And part of the United Nations agreement, you are allowed to take refuge. It is your right to take refuge in any place that you so choose. In Rwanda, it's illegal to flee the country. Ask a singer called Kizito Mihigo, who was killed last year. He was a renowned singer. He was caught attempting to flee the country. And he paid with his life. There are many more people who are either in jail right now or being murdered for attempting to leave the country. As a citizen, it is your right to own a passport because it is a document that actually gives you the privilege to enter and exit your country as you so choose freely. In today's Rwanda, for you to get a passport, it's much harder than a dentist pulling a very beautiful teeth with no issues out of your mouth. The government makes it so difficult for you to own a rightful document called a passport in Rwanda. Forget the passport. Today, in 2022, there are Rwandan citizens, let me put it that, who do not have a national ID, a legally document. It's a legal document that every single Rwandese person ought to have. There are those who have been denied to have those documents. Now, if I deny you a simple document that you are a legal citizen of a nation for 28 years, in other words, you are my property, you do not have rights. If I deny you the right to a passport, you do not have rights. If I deny you a right to go in your own house, and I choose to give you a residence in a very, very, very tough and bad jail, you are the property. If I deny you the right for your rights in a jail, your rights to be, if I deny you the right to go to court, especially those so-called genocidaires, the same right that a citizen ought to have. That is the Rwanda we have today. And that's why I say to you, the international community has had an amnesia of 28 years in a country ruled by a whip, overseen by Paul Kagame since July 20th, 1994 up until today. How many countries, how many nations do you see on the mainstream media denouncing a whip in Rwanda in 2022? How many? How many nations do you see calling out forceful behavior by a government to the Rwandese citizens every day on cameras? 0 to none. Perfect example, in just this year in January 2022, go to your social medias. No, don't go to social medias. Go on any of the news stations of your choice. Pull out the recent news this month only. See any article that may suggest a forceful act by the government of Rwanda towards the people. Any act by force being executed by the government of Rwanda against the wishes of citizens of Rwanda, the so-called citizens. It can only be forceful and it can only be implemented when it is being implemented to subjects. That's why I'm saying modern slavery in Rwanda, a perfect system ran by Paul Kagame, against millions of Rwandese people, while the international community just claimed to know nothing about it. The day is coming when all of you will be asked, what were you doing from 1994 all the way to 2022 for all these things to have been taking place? Especially, you've gave us money, you have given us the expertise in arms, in all kinds of sectors, in health, in agriculture, in this, in that, all of it. What have you done? Now, for you specifically, African, you talk about Rwanda so much, yet you have yet to do your own personal research about it. You are being presented Rwanda as a movie, a facade of Rwanda, but not the reality of Rwanda. When are you going to wisen up and do your own research? When are you going to wisen up and actually get closer to few Rwandese people and say, hey, how is your nation actually? Don't ask those who have fled the country because they are going to be biased. Ask those in the country. But if you so choose, also ask those who are actually living in the country, who aren't labor genocidals. Because if someone is pre-labor genocidal, by default you see them even run because you don't want you want to do nothing. You want nothing to do with anybody called a genocidal. Just ask it to those who are just living right now. There are plenty of them. So what are we saying? And what am I saying to you, young people, especially? I am saying to you, wake up. If we are to take the full dominion of Africa, if we are to take the full control of Africa, if we are to take the entire management of the land of Africa and its resources, you've got to go back to the drawing boards, guys. You have to be able to be fully aware, to acknowledge everything or every single thing that's taking place in your nation, in your region, in your village, in your community. You have to be aware of it. You have to be a person of integrity. You have to speak the truth. Speak on behalf of the voiceless. You have to say that evil is evil no matter who is representing the evil. You have to say no to a whip in 2022, my goodness. In 1700s, in 1600s, in 1500s, slaves were being killed either through the journey, during the ownership season, and also after. It wasn't until slavery was abolished, physical slavery was abolished. It just appeared to be a dehumanizing thing. It made everybody look bad. However, they removed the piece that made everybody look bad. But they maintain the rest of the system. They just say, okay, we won't put any shackles in you. But we are going to make it so that the system we have is going to actually keep you in check. But Rwanda, since July 20th, 1994, brought back a whip. This whip that you see here, it was brought back. Up until this very day that this broadcast is taking place, this whip, it's a norm. Is a norm in Rwanda that you call Singapore of Africa. So what are you going to do about it, young people? What are you Rwandese people going to do, especially if you're so-called a citizen of a country called Rwanda? What are you Africans, especially those of you who call yourself Pan-Africanist. What are you going to do about Rwanda? Will you bother at least look and see if anything that we said here is not true? And call us out publicly the same way I am publicly saying this. Will you denounce evil when you see evil? Will you take charge of your own homeland? It is your legal right. It is your inalienable right. Remove people like the Paul Kagames out of your governments, out of your leadership. They do not belong there. And it is unfortunate that these developed nations have picked for you and for me. They saw that it was fitted for Rwanda to have Paul Kagame as a manager. And while they had a good preferred manager, they made sure that as long as our interest is being sought for, you can do as you please, we will look away. That is truthfully what's happening in Rwanda today. That is something they call modern slavery, young people. And I wish not one single of you to be in a predicament where you become a subject to another human being in 2022. And I plead that you, members of the United Nations, who still have a conscience, who know the history we have gone in Rwanda, you dust off all those files. You dust off all those complaints. You dust off all those crimes committed by the Rwandan Patriotic Front. And you bring them to justice today, not tomorrow. We plead with you to put that in action. Now, with or without you doing it, as sons, daughters, and descendants of Rwanda, as sons, daughters, and descendants of Africa, we are going to do it with or without your blessings. Gone are the days where we can just be a bystander and watch these things happening just because this very powerful nation is doing it, just because that little teeny country, so-called developed nation, is doing it. Gone are the days where you just look at the very five biggest nation in the United Nations that calls the shots in the rest of the world. Gone are the days where we allow you to come in and you implement policies that actually encourages impunity in a little teeny country as Rwanda against millions of people. And it's okay because none of them can say that you are killing us. They have become slaves. They cannot speak freely. The same alienable right that they claim, that you claim in the United Nations, that every human being on planet Earth ought to have. Not so in Rwanda, and you know it. It is sad that in 2022, we have lost the moral compass. We have lost the moral compass of what is right, what is good. And that's why we say we want that back today. So young people, I am sadly actually talking to you because 28 years, it's such a long time. If you were born on July 20, 1994, today you may have a family by God's grace. You are a grown man or woman. If you had the opportunity to move ahead, things are going well for you. Think about of that kid somewhere in Africa who's fallen behind because their nation has been fighting non-stop. Think about now Rwanda. The same Rwanda led by that Paul Kagame that you claim to be a benevolent leader, the most amazing statesman of Africa, a Pan-Africanist who has slaves in his backyard, who has slaves policies in a nation called Rwanda since July 20, 1994. What do you have to say about yourself today? And let me also ask, what are you going to do about this? Now that you know. Now that you know. I also want to put it out here. We have been getting censored for speaking like this. However, this nation, the United States, encourages every American citizen to exercise the right not only to a free speech, but to living a good quality life. They encourage you to work hard for the better of you, your family, your community, and your nation. They encourage you to fight for your inalienable right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Those same rights are non-existent to most Rwandese people. I submit to you today on 22nd day of January 2022. Shame on us, the global citizen. Shame on us, those of you who claim to have democracy, especially if you are helping Rwanda to advance and you actually parade yourself that you have done well, because we have buildings that look like the same buildings we have downtown Washington, D.C. That you have stadium that look like the sort of stadium we can see in New York City or in Japan. So I plead with you all to smell the coffee. Wake up. You sons, daughters of Africa, I ask you to please take charge today as leaders of Africa. Take charge today as kings and queens of Africa. Take charge today of your homeland, of your country, of your village, of your very, very own community. And take charge of your families. Look after the very best interests of you as a family, you as a community, you as a nation primarily, before the rest of the world. Africa has plenty of the resources that they can share around. But you are going to have to be the one to actually share the resources, not the other way around, not the outsiders coming inside. So I'll end it there, guys. My time's up. I am so grateful that you have taken the time to follow this program. By all means, please give us some feedbacks. Send us some feedbacks on AfriDominion website. The address is www.afridominion.com. Shoot us an email at info@afridominion.com. Be free to also give us a call. Our numbers are going to be there. Our groups are going to be there. I encourage you to come and hang out with us in those private groups. You will find other like minds who have stories to tell, to share, who are writing history on behalf of our own people. And with that in mind, guys, I'm super grateful for the opportunity to serve you today. And I will do it over and over and over and over again. I am Freeman Singirankabo here at AfriDominion Show. I want to wish you a super fantastic day. May our Father in heaven lead you forward and give you the zeal, the courage to fight for what is right for our own people, to fight for what is right for our families, to fight for what is right to our communities, to fight for what is right to our villages, to fight for what is right for our nation, to fight for what is right to the continent of Africa. And with that in mind, We'll see you next time. Peace.